Hey, this is Mark A. Altman from Inglorious Trexperts. And if you like our show, Inglorious Trexperts, you'll love Disco Nights with host Chase Masterson and special guests every week. All new episodes premiere every Thursday night wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello, this is not Gene Roddenberry, but if I was around, I would definitely be listening to Inglorious Trexperts, the new podcast from the people who brought you the 430 movie. Check it out, 430movie.com.
Hey, this is Mark A. Altman, and if you're a fan of the only gentleman secret agent with a license to kill and thrill, you should pick up my new James Bond oral history, Nobody Does It Better, available now in hardcover, audio, and digital wherever books are sold.
Do you expect me to read?
No, I expect you to buy it. Hey, this is Mark Altman, and welcome to Kung Fu Fighting Week. Dun 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 dun. It's your martial arts experts. Hiya! It's DAREN DOCHTERMAN, Steve Monday Melching.
My snake style kung fu is far superior to your eagle claw.
And of course, Ashley the Eel Miller.
Hi.
Hi.
It's more like
Hi.
Hi.
It's cultural
How are
appropriation
you doing?
week on the 430 movie.
I'm just saying hi. Hi.
Hi.
Hi.
Well,
Hi.
have we got an action-packed week for you? This is a week of martial arts, kung fu. It's nonstop action.
Karate.
Karate.
Perhaps a little bit of karate.
The way of the fist, which is not porn.
Watch it.
What kind of podcast do you think this is? This is the 430 movie.
What kind of
4:30 in the afternoon, young man.
10:30 movie.
Well, this is exciting. Movie. So, when did you guys sort of discover the worlds of kung fu movies and martial arts? I mean, this is definitely something, again, 430 movie-esque. The sort of films of certainly on Channel 9 in New York, more so than Channel 7, because they seem to have the lowest budgets to license films. But what was your introduction to the world of these films, Steve Melching?
Well, mine absolutely was on television. It was certainly on shows like the 430 movie, probably like a Saturday afternoon movie or something late at night on the weekend. And, it was kind of a revelation. I thought they were really fun to watch. And, they really captured my imagination for a period of time in my junior high and high school years.
One of the fun things about the show is I always try and guess what you guys are going to pick, because none of us have any idea what the other person is going to pick. So, for this week, Darren, I have absolutely no idea whatsoever what your pick is going to be.
That makes two of us.
You're going to be so surprised.
Is this a genre that you're a big fan of, Darren?
I never got into kung fu movies. I just never did. I mean, I saw them. I saw that they existed on television, and I just was never pulled in by them. And I'm sure we'll cover the movies that I am familiar with this week, hopefully. And if I'm not, it'll be a nice opening of a new world for me to be exposed to. So I'm looking forward to that.
It could be the man with the golden gun. He's got a powerful weapon. He charges a million shots. But that unfortunately, this was during the 70s where Bond would capitalize on whatever the fad was. So you had blaxploitation, Live and Let Die. You had Star Wars, Moonraker, and of course, least successfully, I would argue,
always got to be about Bond for you,
is the man with the golden gun, which was kung fu films.
Well, Woody Allen never made a kung fu movie, unless he
did. What's Up, Tiger Lily?
Yeah. Yes, he did.
And he regrets having done that because he feels that by redubbing it and making a serious serious movie into a comedy, he was being disrespectful to the filmmakers. But it's still funny. It got some great jokes in it. They're trying to get the egg, the recipe for perfect egg drop soup, egg noodle soup, or egg soup, or I don't remember.
You got
wonton soup.
Egg drop soup. Brush up on your Woody Allen movies.
I haven't seen What's Up, Tiger Lily in a very long time. I'm not a big Loving Spoonful fan.
Right.
So anyway, Ashley, tell us about your passion for wuxia, for martial arts, for King Kong, for kung fu.
For King Kong Fu. I love it when giant monkeys kick the shit out of dinosaurs using only their hands and their feet. Right? You haven't lived until you've seen a 50-foot monkey with a black belt go ham on an entire city. It's the best. Honestly, first of all, I want to say to Darren, and really to all of you, I think last week after I broadened my horizons to Annie Hall, it warms my heart to see you guys coming a little bit this way. Coming a little bit this way. I love it.
That's extremely little.
I think some of you are coming a little further than others. But yeah, man, I grew up with this stuff on Ever 11, UHF, Channel 20. When I was a kid, there was always the Saturday afternoon, kung fu block of films. It was all the Bruce Lee stuff. It was Jackie Chan. Like it just, they played it all. I won't name names because God only knows what's going to come up on this show. But I learned so much. Like I went through most of my childhood thinking that when you punched somebody, it sounded like you shot an elephant, right? Like that's what I thought. I was always confused when people spoke to me and their lips synced up with their words. I loved all of it. I don't know if I'm like Quentin Tarantino love all of it, but I loved all of it when I was a kid. So I'm very excited about this.
I'm excited that I bet Ashley has probably actually seen my pick, which is more than I can probably say for Darren and Mark.
But that's okay.
Well, we'll be the judge of that, young man.
Yeah.
I probably watched them on Channel 20 as well. And, come to think of it, the first movie I ever made or tried to make was a kung fu movie. When I was in high school, I had my Super 8 camera, and me and my good friend Dave McDermott started to make a kung fu movie called The Clone Master, in which, and it was The Clone Master because there were only 3 of us. So right. I played the hero, Kyogi the Wanderer. My friend Dave played the evil clone master who had sorcery by which he could summon an army of clones to battle Kyogi. So our same friend could fight me over and over again as a clone. And, we sped up the film so we could do, fast martial arts action. I had some nunchucks that I could do at super high speed with the camera trickery. It's good time.
And then you did the sequel, The Clone Master and Commander. But I'm impressed, Steve. I'm really impressed because my early Super 8 movies were things like Attack of the Killer Avocados. So I was paying homage to a shitty genre, whereas you were actually doing cool stuff. I did my famous trilogy: Attack of the Killer Avocados, Revenge of the Killer Avocados, and of course, The Good, the Green, the Ugly, which was my favorite. So,
that was the one that was like 3 hours long.
Well, my parents had this bowl of fake avocados in the living room, which I never understood, but they were very easy to use for stop motion.
Well, you started the genre of guacamole westerns.
Oh,
that's really funny. That's really funny.
I thought for sure you were going to say your first film was like a take on My Dinner with Andre.
No, I don't. Because we didn't have sync sound. My early Super 8 cameras, they were silent. So you couldn't, they could be very dialogue intensive, it really wasn't until college that I actually was making stuff, which is actually there's a perfect segue into the Kung Fu movies, because of course, a lot of the movies are being made in China and being made in Hong Kong, like the spaghetti westerns, didn't have sync sound, where the sound was dubbed after the fact, all the dialogue, and it made it easier later on when a lot of these movies were never subtitled, they dubbed for other territories to just have different people record the dialogue. I got to ask you, how many, because I think, experience with the world of Kung Fu was literally Kung Fu, the old TV series with David Carradine, which, you know, as the legend goes, they sort of stole from Bruce Lee, the concept for Kung Fu. But man, I loved that show as a kid. You know, it seemed, you know, it had action, it had sort of a cerebral quality to it. You know, I haven't watched it in, you know, forever. But I remember, you know, it felt very different because it felt like there was a lot of like location shooting. It felt different than anything else that was on TV at the time.
Well, it was definitely taken from Bruce Lee's pitch for a show, and I say this with authority because I have seen Bruce Lee's actual notes, like his handwritten notes, the drawings that he did, like all kinds of crazy stuff. This was a couple of years ago, like in the first time they tried to develop the new Kung Fu series, kind of based on that, with Justin Lin's company, and it was just fascinating to me, like seeing all of that and just sort of seeing like how he depicted things. I think I love Kung Fu, this series, but it definitely it definitely came from Bruce Lee, in my opinion. I don't know that there's a lot of people who disagree with that. I also heard a great story about the making of the Kung Fu, The Legend Continues show that was in syndication.
Sure.
In the 90s, I think.
In the 90s.
80s.
Yeah. One of the directors of that show was a director on Andromeda. And I'm not going to say which one just to protect the innocent, but he was telling us that David Carradine's behavior, for various and sundry reasons, became increasingly erratic, to the point where it was just dangerous to have him fight on set. So as the seasons wore on, they gave him more and more Kung Fu powers until finally he could just walk into a room and everybody would fall over.
That's hysterical. You know, that show, the showrunner was Maurice Hurley. It was the show that he did for first run syndication after he left Next Generation. And of course, he ended up, Shatner directed a few episodes of that. Because him and Hurley became friendly after they met, because, you know, there were two scripts being developed for Star Trek Generations. One of them was the Maurice Hurley draft that never got made. And so him and Shatner became kind of tight. And Shatner ended up doing a couple episodes of Kung Fu, The Legend Continues. But now I really want to watch it based on what you said. By the way, speaking of television, this is a shameless plug for our sister podcast. If you haven't listened to the Inglorious Trexperts holiday special, you owe it to yourself. We do a countdown of the 101 greatest sci-fi and fantasy episodes ever, and it's a hoot. 4 hours, 4 parts. And,
no, it's 8 hours.
Oh, it's 8 hours. Excuse me. It's 8 hours, 4 parts.
You can drive up and down the East Coast.
Yeah. So if you can't fly, which you shouldn't be doing in the pandemic, but you're driving somewhere, it's perfect, because you could literally like just listen to us the whole trip and have an episode just to listen to on the way back.
I wouldn't want to wish that on anyone, actually.
Well, it's been interesting, and we're going to do a special episode where we're going to look back at the countdown, and some of our viewers
we're going to do a retrospective on the countdown.
We're going to have a 3 hour special looking back.
Oh,
at
you're
the
doing a
8 hours.
countdown. Yeah, it's so if you're looking for something to do, you know, now that the holidays are over, you may want to check out the Inglorious Trexperts holiday specials. 4 parts, 8 hours, 101 episodes. Legendary.
8 hours. That's what you call discipline, right? Just
oh my God, I know. It was 8 hours. That was tough, but we did it. We got through it. People seem to like it. So at least part 1, they're in for a world of hurt by the time they get to part 4. But the response so far has been very positive. So check that out if you're a fan of sci-fi TV. But right now we're talking about Kung Fu fighting and martial arts films. So I want to look at Mr. Monday, Steve Melching, who's going to lead us in curating a fantasy theme week of classic martial arts wonders. Steve, right. What's it going to be?
All right. Yeah. Well, as we've touched on a little bit, the Kung Fu or martial arts genre is actually a pretty surprisingly broad genre. You know, it can include a lot of, technically you could say Rocky is a martial arts movie because there's fisticuffs in it.
And there is the Eye of the Tiger.
Yes.
There it is.
Yeah.
You know, and it can encompass anything from some of the early stuff in the 50s and 60s, the Bruce Lee stuff, to the great Hong Kong series of films, to, you know, stars like Jackie Chan and Jet Li and Stephen Chow and Donnie Yen. But then there's the American side. You got your Chuck Norris, you got your Steven Seagal, and you got your Muscles from Brussels, you got your Jean-Claude Van Damme. So, you know, these films have kind of persisted for the last 40, 50 years now. And there's an awful lot of them. And I wouldn't call myself an aficionado by any means. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of martial arts fans that are disappointed by our, at least my relatively shallow knowledge of martial arts movies. But my fondness for those films is basically centered around the Hong Kong films of the 70s. And my choice comes smack in the middle of that era, and it might have been the first martial arts movie I saw. It's certainly what I've seen the most, and it's a ton of fun. It's actually a sequel to a film called One Arm Boxer that came out in 1971, but my choice is from 1976, and it is called Master of the Flying Guillotine. Or as the Chinese say, guillotine.
From beyond the outer limits of your imagination, he's the master of the flying guillotine. And he's ready to blow your mind. With more nerve-shattering special effects than you have ever seen before. It's a trip into a world where warriors from the ends of the universe meet in combat that knows no boundaries.
So this is a movie, I feel like Stefan. It has it all. It has a one-armed fighter. It has a blind guy. It has a martial arts tournament. It has crazy martial arts powers. It's got all kinds of weapons. But it's really great. It's the story. It's your classic kung fu movie story of a blind master whose students were killed, and he is seeking revenge on the one-armed boxer who killed his students. Of course, turns out his students, were bad, and so this guy's the villain. But
it was a one-armed boxer.
One-armed boxer, and
he came into my school.
You don't come into my dojo and throw down a challenge and leave. So, so this blind master is actually a master of the flying guillotine, which is one of the great martial art weapons of all time. It looks like a friggin' flying lampshade on a chain, and you snap this thing open and throw it, and it lands on the head of your opponent, and a series of blades on the inner circumference decapitates the head, and he can withdraw the chain back and dump the head out, and it's ready to go again and decapitate someone else.
It's also great for opening beers, by the way.
And it's hurled. It's got a great whistling sound effect when it's thrown.
How much would you pay?
It's hilarious. And then, of course, his target is this one-armed boxer who is a good man who has opened his own kung fu studio and has a whole bunch of students. And I love his introduction because he's sort of, looking at his students that are training, and he's going to show them something new, this new jumping technique, which will enable them to almost be weightless. And there's a great scene when he's like gathers all the students inside and he's like going to show them this thing. And he basically does this sort of Fred Astaire dancing on the ceiling thing where he walks up the wall across the ceiling and then back down the other wall. And the students are marveling at that. And he goes, "That's all I'm going to show you today." Like, what?
That's it. Just a little taste.
It's hilarious. So, of course, in the grand tradition of so many of these martial arts films, there's a big tournament happening at a big, kung fu studio. And so fighters from a dojo. So fighters from all across the land. I don't think it's a dojo in China. It's a what do they call it? Dojo is Japanese, I believe.
Right.
What is a Chinese martial arts studio called? It would be a sifu rather than a sensei.
Right.
Ah.
Yes. Correct.
But so fighters from across the land with all their varied techniques, will gather for this big tournament, this elimination tournament. And so you get a great sequence that takes up about 30 or 40 minutes of this 90-minute movie. That's just one pair of guys fighting, pairs of people fighting and mutilating and killing each other in various colorful styles. And one of my favorites is this guy. There's this Indian, they call him the yoga or the yogi. And his power is he can like stretch his arms out really long. They'll like extend out to be like 6 feet long. So he can like strangle you from 6 feet away and you can't land a glove on him. Can't land a fist or a foot on him. It's friggin' hilarious. And of course the guillotine master thinks that this tournament will draw out the one-armed boxer so that he can take his revenge on him. And the one-armed boxer, of course, is there, and the guillotine master shows up, and they're going to have a throwdown. And the whole third act of this movie is the one-armed boxer taking on the victors in this tournament, who for some reason all sort of align with the guillotine master. So this guy has to fight all of these badasses that have been murdering people for the previous 40 minutes. Until he finally faces off against the guillotine master in a very clever set piece that he's able to trick the guillotine master's keen sense of hearing and the heightened senses that he uses to compensate for his blindness and ultimately take him on. And
a very similar thing happened to Worf in Purgatory's Shadow.
That's right. Was that one of the top 100 episodes?
Well,
you have to listen and find out.
To listen, yeah. What would you like to know?
Is that an hour?
8 hours, Steve.
And one of the other great distinctive things, so the one-armed boxer is played by a guy named Jimmy Wang Yu, who also wrote and directed the movie. It was made in Hong Kong. And one of the other great things about this movie is the soundtrack. It's got the craziest freaking soundtrack. It's all this, what they call it, kraut rock, this German rock from like the 70s. So there's a Tangerine Dream cut in this. There's a Kraftwerk piece in this. And one of the biggest fans of this movie is Quentin Tarantino. And one of the times I saw this movie was at that kind of dive movie theater in Santa Monica on 2nd Street. I can't remember what it was called. It was like a 3 or 4-plex right on 2nd Street off the promenade. And I saw it there at like a midnight movie. And Tarantino was sitting across the aisle from me. I recognized him from Reservoir Dogs. Like, oh, there's Quentin Tarantino. And he was yucking it up to his thing. And he liked this movie so much that he used the same piece of music that was the Guillotine Master's theme as the bride's theme in Kill Bill.
Right.
And oh gosh, what else? So it's just a really fun movie. The version that I watched, there's a version on YouTube that you can watch. It's on Peacock. There's a DVD out, but it was funny the way the version I watched was kind of indifferently switching between dubbed Cantonese and dubbed English, subtitled Cantonese and dubbed English. Like even within the same scene, suddenly he'd speak a couple lines in Chinese with subtitles, and then he'd be back to bad English dubbing. It's pretty friggin' hilarious. So, Master of the Flying Guillotine. It's a great time.
I'm really surprised because knowing your taste, I really thought you were going to pick Enter the Muppets, where Kermit is walking the earth, and Miss Piggy has to save him from bandits who try and stop him.
Your sensei.
And then he sort of has his fool, his Fozzie Bear, who follows Kermit around as he walks the earth, and Miss Piggy is there to protect him.
I have to tell you, the Muppets version of this movie would not be more BANANAS bananas than the movie already is. And I think one of the great things about it, and what I love about Steve starting the week off with his film, is that it kind of points out something that many of the uninitiated don't quite realize, is that there is this very strong fantasy element to a lot of these films. That, you know, a lot of the sort of the weirdness in the fighting, like the yogi, like all of that, like, you know, walking on the ceiling, like there's a surreal sort of magical thing happening. And something else that's just kind of, when you watch them, you sort of meditate on them as musicals with big dance numbers. It changes your entire perspective. So, I mean, as much as these movies are about the fighting, like there's so much more to them than just the fighting. Like there's an entire, like, there's mythology behind them. There's dance, there's choreography. And when you really break it down, as insane as it can be, it's really quite beautiful. And you just kind of wonder how in the hell they pulled some of it off without actually killing people.
Well, these actors are incredible athletes. You know, I mean, the people that they're athletes, not really actors in general. They're incredible martial artists and athletes, and the stuff that they're able to pull off. I mean, you know, you're surprised there's not a higher body count in the making of these movies.
Well, there may very well be, but they don't tell anybody.
There has been. I mean, when you look at how seriously injured and, you know, and sometimes killed people have been making these, you know, these films, particularly in the 70s and 80s, you know, because people were putting, you know, and you know, so many people that retired young because they just so, you know, destroyed their bodies doing these stunts. And I mean, there was no CG, and, you know, it wasn't even this kind of safety measures that, you know, Hollywood that would have on some of its movies. I mean, what they did was extraordinary. But I have to say, you know, it's interesting what Ashley said, because of course that was how, you know, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon became the #1 grossing foreign language movie in the United States, because they marketed it as the love story, and they marketed the choreography as a dance. They sold the whole fight choreography as dancing, you know, and they said this is something like you would see at Lincoln Center, you know, except so they downplayed the whole idea of you know, the martial arts and the kung fu and all that to you know, and basically said, you know, it's like a musical, and you know, this great romance. And, you know, as a result, you had all these people who would never see a kung fu movie, a martial arts movie, going to see it, and became, you know, wildly successful.
Well, that whole sequence where oh my God, I had his name in my head and I'm just blanking it.
Chow Yun-Fat.
Chow Yun-Fat is chasing Zhang Zi, and they're skipping across the water and then floating up into the bamboo forest. I mean, it's just gorgeous.
Yeah. No,
By the way, I just want to say for the record that, you know, there are potentially a lot of pitfalls with this week with pronunciation, and I would like to just remind everyone that I don't know how to pronounce Patrick McNee. So if I or any of us screw up any of that,
wrong syllable.
Yes, please send your complaints to Jessica Von Baker.
No, Steve, you don't understand, because you haven't listened to the 8 hours yet. But we talked about War of the Gods, the Battlestar Galactica episode, and for about 10 minutes, he was gushing enthusiastically about this episode and the brilliant performance of Count Ibley, which he was able to pronounce, and Patrick McNee.
Which I could not.
Until we finally explained mercifully that it was Patrick McNee. And having been in that situation myself, I'm sure Ashley was very appreciative, because I know after, you know, about an hour of going on about what's his name? The Puttkamer. That it was nice to actually find out that his name was not you know, Puttermaker or whatever
yes, that's right.
I said.
Well, I had been pronouncing it Gal Gadot for too long until I know it's Gal Gadot. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh, and I just got corrected. I called her Gal Gadot, and my wife said no, it's Gail Gadot. No, so I know.
Not.
I'm sure Naomi's listening to the podcast.
I say Gadot. Tomato.
You say tomato. I say tomato. So, and after watching Wonder Woman 84, let's call the whole thing off.
Oh, hey now.
My God. Did you guys watch it this week on HBO Max?
No.
Yeah. This should be a much later episode of the 4:30 movie.
What is it going to be?
Bad films we wanted to see.
Did you see Soul? Did you guys see Soul?
I haven't seen Soul yet.
Soul is lovely.
I really liked it.
Too many tries trying to watch the Wonder Woman movie.
Ah, okay. I really like Soul too. I thought it was wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, when we do Pixar Week, maybe it'll make the cut because we've done Animation Week, but it might be time for Pixar Week.
Sure.
You know?
It very well
So
could be.
we'll have to see. Okay. So that brings us great pick, Steve. I have to say this is another one of those films I have not seen, but I intend it to be my New Year's resolution in 2022. Now I will watch it before then.
It's a hoot, and I bet your kids would enjoy it too. It's really
Especially the decapitations.
yeah. I mean, it's a 70s kung fu movie. Yeah, it's violent, but it's that really cheesy looking kung fu blood that's just too red and too pasty. You know, it's not really
look, you don't have to make
It's
excuse. I'm sold. It sounded great. So I'm looking forward to it. I mean, it's interesting because I really feel like there was that time in the 90s when we were all starting to hang out where we were seeing, I mean, it wasn't so much martial arts and wuxia as we were seeing like Hong Kong movies. You know, it was that era of Hard Boiled and The Killers. And I mean, there was Ringo Lamb, City on Fire, and all that stuff, and Bride with the White Hair, which would qualify. But, you know, that was becoming very popular in the 90s. And we would go to the New Art and the Cinematheque and all these theaters that were playing it in LA. I mean, that to me was sort of where I became more educated about this stuff, because I wouldn't say that in the 70s and 80s it was something other than Man with the Golden Gun that I really knew.
Right.
It was really in the 90s where, and it was, I think part of that was also, you know, Tarantino really popularized
Popularized it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Patrick Macnee. And, you know, and that was sort of when it became a lot more major. And then, of course, with Crouching Tiger. And then there was that whole succession of movies, which may show up. So I don't want to talk about them. So that brings us to Tuesday.
Didn't they call those gun fu?
Gun
Right.
Fu.
That was John Wick.
Well, Gun Fu paved the way
Gun Fu.
for John Wick. I mean, John Wick's great, but John Wick, you know, obviously owes a debt. It's not ripping it off. It's definitely paying homage to the Gun Fu of, you know,
It
John
owes a
Woo and all.
blood debt.
Yeah.
What?
It owes a blood debt. That sounds like
It owes, yeah.
like a
Yeah,
kung
but
fu
you know, look,
movie kind of thing.
But yeah, that's a whole nother episode. That's potentially a whole nother week is Gun Fu.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do a Gun Fu week. So, but because the lethal weapons in these movies are people's hands, not their weapons. So that brings us to Tuesday. Speaking of lethal weapons, it's Daren Doctorman. Daren, what's your pick for Tuesday?
Well, my pick for Tuesday is something that came as a big surprise. It sort of came out of nowhere for me, who didn't follow any of these, the Hong Kong movies especially, or any of the martial arts films, certainly until much later. This movie came out in 2001 in China. And then later it debuted in the United States and elsewhere. But it is the brainchild of Stephen Chow, who has become sort of the modern master of these kind of films. And certainly in the Hong Kong film world, he is the top man. This is, it's the triple threat. He directed, he wrote, and he stars in it. And it is completely batch crazy. It is Shaolin Soccer.
Yeah.
Long ago, in this sacred temple, 6 best friends learned the secrets and mastered the power of an art called Shaolin Kung Fu. Now, they've lost their way, but one man is getting them back together.
Kung Fu is perfect for sports.
To remind them of the courage they still have and apply it to a game they've never played.
Kung Fu Soccer. Pow!
It will take time.
Hey, it's there! It's coming down!
It will take practice.
When you can kick an egg without breaking it, then you can join us.
And it will take the talents of a young girl.
You're beautiful. And a Kung Fu master, you got it all.
You cannot describe this film. I mean, you can try, but it's not successful because it is complete. Forget what you know or think you know, because it's a completely different world. It's a strange sort of hyper realistic reality where kung fu skills are magic, and it's unbelievable. It's a story about a young Shaolin follower reunites with his discouraged brothers to form a soccer team using their martial arts skills to their advantage. And they do indeed.
It's like victory.
It's
Oh, you beat me to it. I was just going to say Sylvester Stallone and Pele and Michael Caine were really good there,
my
too.
goodness. It's, I mean, flaming balls, folks. Flaming balls.
Yeah. Kicked so hard.
They should have called it Flaming Balls of Justice. It's unbelievable. They just crazy choreographed scenes with not a lot of fighting, but a lot of sort of expertise and skills in goal, 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 goal. It's unfreaking believable. And the original cut is about 110 minutes or so. The American cut is 87 minutes. And I haven't seen the foreign cut yet, but from what I hear, 87 minutes is plenty because everything you'd want to see is there, and it's jam-packed, Pee-wee. It's unbelievable, and it's one of those things that it sort of creates its own reality around it, and you just have to go along, and it's really magical and crazy as.
There are a lot of yes, I don't want to say tropes, but I will because I can't think of a different word of the kung fu film, right? That the movies of the 70s really laid down. There's always a school. There are two schools. There are competing schools. There's the Sifu. There's the teacher, right? It's like you've got your temple. There's very often there's a competition. And what's really brilliant about Shaolin soccer is it takes all of those tropes and just transposes them to soccer. That's it. That's all it does. It takes those things and it changes the arena.
Right.
And when it does that, it elevates it and it makes it completely brilliant. It's so funny. Stephen Chow has got just this amazing comic timing. All of these guys are just hilarious in his movies. And because they're all these incredible athletes, incredibly well-trained stuntmen, like just the physical comedy works in ways that just you can't believe. It's like, what if you watched a Jackie Chan movie where everyone was Jackie Chan?
Right.
That's what I'm talking about. It's that crazy and it's that imaginative. I don't know how much crack you'd have to smoke to come up with half of that movie, but you'd have to smoke a lot of it, a whole lot of it. Because it makes Master of the Flying Guillotine look like Serpico. I mean, it's just in terms of just how grounded it is versus
in reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think Guillotine is one of those great, gritty 70s movies.
Because at least it has a K-tel device that you can use.
Yes.
You would kill a man with an 8-track tape? Wait, no.
Well, especially if it's in the mouth of 2XL.
Yes. Oh boy. 2XL. 2XL needed the money. Wait, is that what you're talking about?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
And watch your 2XL make his return engagement on this podcast.
So that's my pick for Tuesday.
A great pick. We're off to a really good start for a week. We weren't sure how it was going to turn out, but now that brings us to Ashley.
Oh,
and
guys.
it'd be so interesting because obviously, Ashley lives and dies for this, and he's had so many out of the box picks. And with this week, you can go out of the box, you can go in the box, mainstream, not mainstream. Would be very interesting.
What's in the box?
And my pick for Thursday is Wednesday or whatever day it is Gwyneth Paltrow's head, the motion picture.
Removed by the flying guillotine.
That's right, and placed and used as a soccer ball. And
Yes.
Guys, God, I feel like I should be doing Thursday just so I could give the whole. But I could talk about speech.
Nope, that's for Friday.
Yeah, I'm in such a strange position.
Choose something.
Okay. I can't even, again, I'm in a place where I can't even troll Mark this week because he would be like, I don't get it.
I don't know what that is. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm just going to go with 3 Men and a Baby.
All right. On to Thursday.
Okay. Thursday. All right. Now, okay. So I am going to go a little bit out of the box. But it's only a little bit out of the box in the sense that, look, over time, Kung Fu films and how the Kung Fu films of the 70s, how that whole genre has influenced kind of films in that category going forward. I mean, it's evolved, right? Like, and now it's kind of split into different branches. There are very, out of control kind of fantasy wuxia movies like Shaolin Soccer, or Stephen Chow's like very popular follow-up that I shall not name because it could come up on the show, like, or Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which is also like, it's very fantastical and it's very much about the magic. And I'm only naming that because we spoke of it earlier. Or you can get really down and dirty and gritty and nasty, right? And there are some movies with fights that you cannot believe, with classic scenes that you have seen because American directors have basically ripped them off.
Yeah.
Because they are just that amazing. And I've wrestled with this for days. And I think the only way for me to truly go out of the box on this is to just go inside the box and pick. It's a movie that was made in Indonesia, released in 2011.
Oh, yeah.
It was the start of a franchise. And it's a police story. It's a very simple police story about some cops who go to a tenement where people are making drugs. They get locked inside and all hell breaks loose for about an hour and 45 minutes. And when I say all hell breaks loose, I mean hell. Because the violence in this movie is completely off the hook. You feel every hit. You feel every kick, every gunshot. It's got the gun fu. It's got the kung fu. It's got Muay Thai. It's got all of it, man. And I am referring to Gareth Evans' magnum opus, The Raid.
Selamat pagi. Mungkin Anda sudah mendengar kalau kita kedatangan tamu tak diundang. Selamat bekerja. Dan jangan lupa bersenang-senang.
The Raid was followed by The Raid 2 Redemption, which is even crazier in many of the ways that The Raid is crazy,
not as good.
But not as good. Even though there are people who say, The Raid Redemption is much better. It's not, because the story just isn't as good. The story in The Raid is so simple. It's so clean. It's a survival story. You love all of these cops. You fully believe that they are in up to their necks, including the hero, who you know is a badass. It has amazing fights. It has amazing fight choreography. And not only that, it's shot like just so incredibly well, to the point where you don't even see the cuts at times. It feels like these things could be a oneer, right? Like, it's just, but you know that they can't be. Like, you have to go back and rewatch them to go, oh my God, there was actually a cut there, because the fight was just so incredibly well conceived and so incredibly well shot. And it's visceral in the best ways. The final fight, the climactic fight, is really just 3 dudes in a room, and one dude, the bad guy, kicking the crap out of 2 of our heroes. And it's just, and you feel like our heroes are outnumbered. And it ends like in a way that isn't just kind of violent and bloody. It feels earned in the sense that that our heroes are making a choice that they were loath to make, that killing was a choice they had to make in order to survive, as opposed to just a way to win a fight. But a lot of the fights are like that, and it feels legit. Like it's just such a no-brainer. It's in the best way. It's just such a perfect high concept. It's people are just locked in the arena and they fight. It was I guess Alex Garland paid homage to it with Dredd. And look, I actually really dig Dredd. I think Dredd is pretty awesome, but it's the same basic concept in Dredd. But the raid is great. The fights are great. It is so well paced. It is so well made. If you watch it, you won't be just like we were talking about the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. You won't be thinking, "Oh, I'm watching a kung fu movie," but you are. You absolutely are. It's one of my favorites. I can watch it again and again. I can just watch the fight scenes again and again. They're that great.
Well, I love The Raid too. I think The Raid is great. And it was a revelation when I saw it. I remember it was the talk of, I was at the Citrus Film Festival. It wasn't the year I was there with Steve, but I don't think. No. I remember everyone was talking about, you got to go see this movie, The Raid, and I knew nothing about it. And, went to see it. It was absolutely, blown away by the action and just, how original and how cool it was. So, in fact, it almost was my pick. I'm glad, obviously, that I didn't pick it. I'm glad you picked it because you saved me from having to go there because there's so many other great choices. But yeah, that's a great pick.
I actually haven't seen it. I have heard of it many times, and it slipped past me, and it's been on my list. And after hearing you guys talk about it, I definitely want to check it out.
Oh, you dig it. You dig it. It's super fun. Don't watch on your iPad. Throw it up on the widescreen and just kick back. And the thing is, you can get up, get popcorn. You're not going to miss anything. Just keep it running. It's awesome. It's freaking awesome.
And don't just watch it on the big screen. Make sure you've got your best sound system going.
Turn to 11.
Oh my God. It's the sound design on this film is so excellent. You just hear everything happening in 360. It puts you right in the middle of it. By the way, I kept referring to The Raid 2 as Redemption, and it's not. It's just The Raid 2. It's all very confusing. But yeah, watch this thing on a big screen. Watch it with a great sound system. Just clear everything out and truly just drink it in.
Watch it with someone you love.
Watch it with somebody you love. Yeah, it's my pick for Valentine's Day week. For Love Story week.
I was going to say that would not surprise us, given your history of some of the movies you've made your wife watch with you on your honeymoon. Right?
Or go see it with your mom.
Yeah. Ooh, Ashley, this is so violent.
Well, that's a great pick. Great pick. Now that brings us to Thursday, which I didn't expect to be in such a difficult situation. I figured the low-lying fruit would have been picked by now from the tree.
You figured wrong.
The fact that look, the 10-ton gorilla is not has not been picked. I'm hopeful we can return to it on Friday because I'm not going to pick it. Crouching Tiger, we've talked about. It was featured on a previous episode, so I'm not gonna go there either. And I do believe during Tarantino week we did Kill Bill, didn't we? Or yeah, so that's good. That helps. Yeah, so it really comes down to two films for me since and I'm gonna go. I'm a big Johnny Toe fan, and I given the fact that I hated Wonder Woman so much this week, I'm going to go with another film with a Wonder Woman that I love. And of course, I'm talking about Anita Mui in the Heroic Trio.
An evil emperor of the underworld is using his power.
It's unnatural.
To create an army of darkness.
The world will belong to me.
He can be beaten. Let's get serious.
Now, three extraordinary superheroes must unite in the most fantastic triple threat of all time.
You want it? Come and get it.
Which is a fantastic. It's not fantastic. Let's not lie. It's not fantastic. It's super fun from the 90s. It's Johnny Toe. It's basic. And this, by the way, for all of you who know Michelle Yeoh from Tomorrow Never Dies and God Help Me Discovery, this is the Michelle Yeoh I know.
Right.
And that I love. she starts as the villain in the movie. She works for I would say a villain straight out of Big Trouble in Little China, but of course the villain in Big Trouble in Little China is inspired by all these movies. Yeah. So it's not really, if anything, it's cultural appropriation in the best way. And she's stealing children to create an army of children that will. Of children, army of children, not unlike the
like
right?
a night at Ashley's house.
Yeah, exactly. Can I just interject? Having a small army of children, I don't think an army of children is a great plan. That's a very disorganized army. It doesn't attack what you want it to attack. Sometimes it just wants to play with the enemy, right? It just gives the enemy.
But you know how they can bring down, they give somebody who you got it all figured out. You got the day together. You know what you're doing. You have a ton of obligations, and it all goes to shit. So that's right. There you go. So I wouldn't knock the plan. I think there's something to be said for this army of children. And of course, in addition, the heroic trio, it takes three to make a trio. So besides the wonderful Michelle Yeoh and Anita Mui, the luminous Maggie Chung. She was doing movies like Irma Vep in France at the time, a ton of Hong Kong movies, freaking amazing. And she's great in this movie. And there is just some fantastic martial arts action. It's super fun. In fact, when I sold DOA, Dead or Alive, based on the video game, this was a big influence. In fact, it was one of the reasons we ended up hiring Corey Yoon. There are a lot of problems with DOA, and some of that's in the casting, and some of the problems are in the script. A lot of this problems with the script, but there's some really great action scenes. So I was thrilled to be involved with a movie that sort of pays homage to a lot of these movies that we love. I mean, there's a bamboo forest scene that's really great. So we have a couple of those cool scenes in DOA. It certainly wouldn't be my pick for this week, let me tell you. But there's some really cool things, in DOA, which was definitely supposed to be an homage to these kinds of films. At the same time, sort of adapt the video game, which was hard because there really wasn't much of a plot to the DOA video games, Dead or Alive. And of course, Dead or Alive was also a great series of Hong Kong movies, a different Dead or Alive that wasn't based on the video game. But Heroic Trio is my pick. And I think it's super fun. I think it captures, the spirit of these kind of films. It has, one of the things that I think was great about the Hong Kong films, about these kind of films, is that they had very strong female protagonists. It wasn't always, we know Chow Yun-fat, we know Tony Leung, we know, obviously Jet Li. You wouldn't know from this podcast, Bruce Lee, but I'm sure we'll get to that. And I think it was something that obviously Quentin Tarantino took with him when he did Kill Bill and based that movie all around the bride, Uma Thurman, because these movies, long before American cinema was treating women as equals and giving them action roles. Usually they're the ones who are cowering in fear, being protected by the men and hitting people with flower pots. Hong Kong was treating, the women were just as kick-ass as the men, which was always a really cool thing. And I think you could look at a lot of these movies where that's the case. But Heroic Trio was kind of Hong Kong Charlie's Angels, but I'll take it over Charlie's Angels, particularly the remake, anytime.
I will admit, I haven't seen Heroic Trio, but I'm going to go freaking watch it.
Oh, you should see it. Don't watch the sequel. The sequel, The Executioners, is terrible, but the Heroic Trio is super fun.
Okay,
and you dig it the most because it has a total Big Trouble in Little China vibe.
Okay, awesome. I'm in.
Yeah, that's good. So that's my pick for Thursday, which brings us to Friday.
Oh my God, guys! Friday, there's so many things that we haven't talked about for Friday. Well, Jet Li, we could have easily nominated Hero. Jackie Chan, we could have easily nominated.
That was going to be my second pick. I was deciding between Heroic Trio and Police Story 3, which was released here as Super Cop with Michelle Yeoh and Jackie Chan.
There's never a cop around when you need one. But when this cop's around, one is all you need. outnumbered, and outgunned, even the toughest of cops could use a little help.
Which is just super fun, where he has to go undercover as a bad guy to break out Panther. And
Panther Man.
Panther Man, yeah. Not Tiger Man. That's the sequel. Panther Man. And it is so funny, and it has some really great fights, and has that wonderful Defiant one fights where he's handcuffed to Michelle Yeoh, I think. Michelle Yeoh is great in it. She's super funny. You see not only her chopsaki, but her comedy chops as well. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful movie. All those Police Story movies are fun, but I just love Police Story 3. And Jackie Chan is just a force of nature in that movie, as he is in most films.
I think people would take us out to be horsewhipped if we didn't mention 1973, Bruce Lee, Enter the Dragon.
Black Belt Hall of Fame undisputed martial arts champion and international film star Bruce Lee. His job was to get them out alive.
I'm hoping you'll join us, represent us in the United States. You want me to join this?
Roper, Williams, and Lee. Just when they think they've broken the secret of the island, they find there is no escape from the inscrutable Han. Enter the Dragon from Warner Brothers.
Well,
nobody's horsewhipping us.
No, they will.
That should be the pick for Friday.
No, I absolutely think it should be the pick for Friday. I mean, there's so many great things about that movie. Even like the story of it getting made. That the opening at the temple that Bruce Lee basically insisted on it. The studio didn't want to do it, but the only way that Bruce would do the film is if he could do that. Yeah. And I have to tell you, it's kind of beautiful, right? It's like this is not an exhibition, it's just the training is just awesome, right? It's his philosophy that's all contained in it, and it all sort of weirdly foreshadows the ending. It's like the enemy, uses illusions, shatter the illusion and defeat the enemy. And like that amazing fight at the end with Mr. Han, where he's like, in the Hall of Mirrors. It's just
the lady from Shanghai
right.
ending. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, it's just so iconic. And does anyone have that Criterion set of the Bruce Lee movies?
I do.
No, it's not. It's not. Right. Criterion did do it. Yeah, before that, it was Shout Factory, and then Criterion did that more recent one, which is supposedly great. I don't have it.
And there's also, that was followed up by Way of the Dragon, which was the first appearance of a martial artist that Bruce Lee discovered by the name of Chuck Norris.
That's right.
Yes.
But of course,
Enter the Dragon.
Enter the Dragon has the great crossover with the $6 Million Man, John Saxon.
Yes.
Yes.
And at least one of the Gene Roddenberry pilots. Was it Genesis 2 that had John Saxon?
Yeah, it was Genesis 2. But in fact, I'm glad you said the John Saxon thing, because I was going to say, John Saxon passed away this year.
Yes.
So I feel like we totally have to give it to Enter the Dragon, out of respect to John Saxon. Also, that Laudel Schifrin score is so great. It's so great. And the fight scenes are so great. And I think for people who haven't seen a lot of karate or kung fu or martial arts, everyone knows Enter the Dragon. Right. And, and it was made for like no money, and it's freaking great.
And you can't talk about modern kung fu films without talking about Bruce Lee. I mean, even Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's like Quentin had to kind of pay homage to Bruce, what I thought was a very loving way. But and what I thought, Steve, was very funny about your story about making your kung fu movies and speeding up the camera is a very famous story about Bruce Lee, who actually needed to slow down his punches because his punches were so fast
that the
camera would miss them. It would look like nothing happened on screen. So we had to hit people less hard just for the cranking camera to pick it up. There's so much great shit. And his whole life, it's just, all the tragedy with his son, Brandon, who is like just on his way, I think, to being a major star. Yeah. But for me, kind of being the enthusiast here, I mean, I think before we settle on Enter the Dragon, just like a couple of honorable mentions would be
Oh yeah,
totally. But I will say about Enter the Dragon,
that
it was such a huge influence on Quentin that even though look, the bride dresses like Bruce from Game of Death, that the Enter the Dragon you can see is such an influence on that movie, in a great way, just with amazing cinematography. Because Robert Richardson's cinematography on Kill Bill is absolutely stunning. In addition to being a wonderful script, and I just wish they would release The Whole Bloody Affair here.
I know.
Because although it's played at the New Beverly, it's never actually played and been released on Blu-ray. I mean, like Grindhouse, they released the whole, in various versions of Grindhouse, but they've never released Whole Bloody Affair. And I would love to see that because that film was really never meant to be 2 parts. And even
I've been holding off buying it ever since, waiting for The Whole Bloody Affair. So I've never bought Kill Bill on Blu-ray or DVD.
Yeah, and I really like those movies quite a bit. But again, we've, it's the whole homage. I'd rather go to the films that, the real films like Enter the Dragon, which paved the way for these films that were to come. But yeah, there's so many other movies that we could talk about.
There's the Ip Man, which was based on the life of Bruce Lee's teacher.
Yeah,
which is so funny, by the way. The climactic fight in that movie is Ip Man and like the guys who are like from the Northern style school, and they're fighting in this beautiful house that Ip Man owns and he's responsible for, and it's his wife, and every time they break something, like the bad guy goes, "Oh, I'll pay." He's like, "God, I'm sorry." And at one point, like his kid comes biking into the middle of the scene, is like 5 years old, because Mommy said that if you started fighting in here, stuff would get broken. And then he just goes off. It's bananas. It's cool, but the fights are awesome.
I always thought that was intellectual property man.
Yeah, exactly. IP man. Yeah, now he works for Warner Brothers. There's Old Boy, which is fantastic, which has got like some truly crazy fight scenes. And the infamous hallway fight, which is basically shot as a oneer. It's one wide shot. It's just following Old Boy as he's fighting all of these guys down a hallway, and they descend on him. They kick the crap out of him. He gets back up. He kicks the crap out of them. He pushes them to one side. The camera and the actors are almost always in motion, and you can tell there are moments where the unexpected happens, and you see the actors dealing with it. Like at one point, there's a bat that gets dropped, that rolls into frame, and you can just see, like you see it on the actor's face, like, shit, there's a bat, but he knows he can't fall. So he just kind of kicks it out of the way and carries on with the scene. And it ends with, there's an elevator that opens full of dudes, and our boy just smiles. And the next cut is that door opening and all of those guys falling out, dead, broken, messed up. It's awesome. And the final fight is it's violent. It's crazy. It has a great sort of weird twist, violent ending that's awesome. So Old Boy is great, but I still think Enter the Dragon should be our pick.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show you how you mentioned the elevator scene, and how much contemporary American cinema owes a debt to Hong Kong and Chinese cinema. I mean, look at that wonderful scene in Winter Soldier in the elevator. I mean, that's right out of like a Hong Kong movie.
Absolutely.
There's so many great there's so many Bride with White Hair. I mean, I really like House of Flying Daggers.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
Which I
Hero.
think is terrific. Hero. Yeah. There was a film in 2006, but it's really more gun-fu called Exiled, which I love, which is also but it's more sort of a gangstery kind of thing, but it has some great martial arts in it.
And of course, the Colonel Gum episodes of the original Batman that brought in the Green Hornet.
Yeah, that's right. That's
right.
And Kato
did not want to get his ass kicked by Burt Ward.
That's right.
I don't know if he's wrong.
Yeah, which is one of my favorite episodes, that 2-part episode, Piece of the Action.
I'm going to give a quick shout out to another sort of guilty pleasure kung fu movie that I grew up loving. Bruce Lee, The Man, the Myth. It's this cheap biopic of Bruce Lee, starring one of the stars of the Bruceploitation craze that kicked in after Bruce Lee's death. He kicked in. He was rechristened Bruce Lie, and this movie it's basically it's a biopic. So you see him making his films and developing his new technique of Jeet Kune Do, and it's just hilarious the way they engineer these random fights for him to have. Like he's hanging out with a couple of friends that are working on a road project in Hong Kong, and this troop of like British soldiers comes jogging by and want them to move their barricade, but they can't move their barricade, and the big British sergeant like shoves the guy down, and Bruce Lee steps in, and they have a big fight. It's just crazy, but it's a good time.
Well, Rob Cohn did the Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, which I did not see, which I know a lot of people like.
I liked it. And of course, there's the Jet Li movies, whether it's Fearless or Fist of Legend.
And Jet Li, great martial artist. I think the reason it's funny because every so often there's, they'll say, well, this person is the new Bruce Lee. There's never going to be another Bruce Lee because nobody has Bruce Lee's charisma. Jet Li is a great fighter, no question. But I don't know that he ever had Bruce Lee's accessibility or just kind of that, I don't know, man, like you wanted to talk to that guy.
Well, I would say if there's one person that has it, and I would advocate that since these are kung fu movies, could be a double feature Friday. That's why I think we got to go with some Jackie Chan love, because Jackie Chan has that incredible appeal. He's an amazing martial artist. I mean, he came up in that whole Peking opera style, and he is an unparalleled martial artist and stuntman, and obviously famous for doing all his own stunts and the outtakes at the end of the movies where you see him like getting hurt and
I think that's a great idea to make Friday a double feature. To do, and if we do Enter the Dragon, in tribute to Bruce Lee, then it only makes sense Jackie Chan would be the second half of but which Jackie Chan movie?
Rush Hour 2.
I would argue for Police Story 3.
Rush Hour 3.
Well, it seems like the big contenders are something, Super Cop or Rumble in the Bronx, or oh gosh, what's the other one?
The Tuxedo.
Police Story.
Police Story.
I'd go Super Cop 3, aka
Police Story 3, Super Cop.
Super Cop.
Right.
Look, Super Cop
I could
is
go
great.
along with that.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's do it. Okay, that's a great week, man. That's a great, and you know what? With the running times, it's probably still one day.
Right.
That's great. So, well, this was a fun week. This is a pound for pound, a very entertaining week for anybody who's going to.
Interesting way to start out the year.
Yes. Well, we're not starting out the year because last year we did our New Year's resolutions last week.
Oh yeah. So to begin our year after the New Year's.
Yeah, this will be our year's air. This is our first week of new,
that's what I mean.
Of theme weeks.
Yeah,
that's what I mean.
You know what? Maybe our New Year's resolution collectively was to broaden our horizons.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No. No.
But this will be our first themed week because New Year's resolution wasn't really a theme.
A theme work. Theme work.
Right? A theme.
Yeah, but we got a lot of great more shows planned for you guys coming up in the coming weeks. And, of course, we always appreciate the suggestions via Twitter at 430 Movie Podcast or on Facebook at the 430 Movie page. We do not have an Instagram account, but we probably should.
What did we put on it? Just duck face.
Well, we could put each day the film.
Oh yeah,
but that would involve work. Yeah. So if anyone wants to do that, let us know.
Hoops Miller, do you want to volunteer?
We need a staff.
Yeah,
we need somebody who will put up an image from that film each day to tie in with the film.
We need
that would be good, but it ain't going to be us. So
we need a devoted kung fu disciple.
Not necessarily kung fu, of movies in general, because it would be for the whole year.
I mean, a kung fu-esque disciple, I would say.
Oh yes, all right. He like a Padawan learner.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If we're going to use the Star Wars for that. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I think for all of us who are huge Hong Kong fans, you hear people talk about how incredible that fight was in Phantom Menace. And this is not to besmirch Phantom Menace. I'm not going to get in that. I know some of you on this panel, esteemed colleagues of mine, love that movie. But I'm just saying that fight, for whatever the music's great and for whatever it does well, it's still not like, it doesn't hit the heights of great wuxia. What we've seen in Hong Kong movies. That's why people were like so blown away. And I'm like, it's fine, but it's not like I've seen,
Well, to quote Bruce Lee, you lack emotional content. This is not an exhibition. Kick me.
Well said.
And I like that this kicking off in January. It also happens to coincide with the new season of Cobra Kai.
That's true.
Dropping on Netflix. Which, if you guys haven't seen Cobra Kai, it is a delight.
I would argue the second season of that show is basically a kung fu movie. You got two kung fu schools that are at each other's throats, with the two masters who are going after each other.
I would argue that The Last Jedi is a kung fu movie, but with all the action taking place off screen.
That's interesting, and maybe not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't agree with that, but I would say that if you're a fan of Darren's pick of Shaolin Soccer, you can check out Ted Lasso on Apple.
Yeah,
If you
right.
like soccer, if you like the British football, well, you're in for a treat with Ted Lasso.
By the way, there's another movie we could have named Stephen Chow's Kung Fu Hustle.
Yes,
absolutely.
Terrific,
Kung Fu Hustle. I thought that when he first was talking about Stephen Chow, I thought that was his pick, and then he cagely moved it over to Shaolin Soccer.
I did. I slipped over.
Yeah, very much so. So, okay, Monday, Steve.
Monday is Master of the Flying Guillotine.
Darren Doctorman, your pick for Tuesday.
Shaolin Soccer.
Ashley Miller, Wednesday.
The Raid.
On Thursday, it's the Heroic Trio. And our double feature Friday, it's Enter the Dragon and Police Story 3, Super Cop. What a week!
Woo! What a week.
Woo! That's awesome.
I'm exhausted.
I'm delighted.
I know. I can't wait till they dub us for the when the episode drops. Great. So anyway, well, and also we should say, look, if you're going to seek out any films, find the subtitle versions where they exist. Don't watch the badly dubbed versions.
Yeah.
Although there's something to be said for the enjoyment of a badly dubbed version as well.
That's part of the charm of those 70s Hong Kong movies in my book. And I think, I don't know if I said it, but Master of Flying Guillotine, sometimes it's dubbed and subtitled within the same scene.
Right. If I really had wanted to go out of the box, now that I think about it, since we're talking about the bad dubbings and we didn't bring up What's Up, Tiger Lily, I would have and should have proposed Kentucky Fried Movie.
That's I understand. I understand that pick.
Well, that's one of the things I like about, I think at least when Miramax did Super Cop, at least they had Jackie Chan and Michelle Yeoh dub their parts, their roles, which was good because it's really, I think, when you know the voice of an actor and they dub it with another actor's voice, it can be very, yeah. So, unlike the Jackie Chan Adventures, which Steve wrote for.
That's right. So I've worked with Jackie Chan, kind of.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't talk about that at all during this podcast. I mean, if Ashley could talk about working with Kenneth Branagh on Shakespeare Week, you could talk about working with Jackie Chan.
And then Jackie Chan kicked me in the face.
Of course, the major difference is Ashley actually met and spoke to Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah, I guess there is that. So when we do... But we'll come back and you can tell us George Lucas stories next time. But until then...
unlike Ashley, I've never actually met or spoken to George Lucas.
That's not true.
That is true. I've never met or spoken to George Lucas.
Is that right?
That's absolutely
I thought he used to sit in your story conferences and everything on Clone Wars.
It was a Force Ghost, man.
We didn't do story conferences in first and second season.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Well, on that
Neither did George.
So Ashley, tell us. Well, this is great week, and we'll be back next week with an all-new 4:30 movie. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy. Obey the stay-at-home orders if they have in your area. We don't want to hear any more stories about people getting sick. And you got 8 hours of Inglorious Treksperts you can listen to. So until next week, keep going to the movies. You got plenty of streaming channels to watch. And Eyewitness News starts now.
Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening. But they fought with expert timing. There were funky Chinamen from funky Chinatown. They were chopping them up. They were chopping them down. Chinese art, and everybody knew their part. From a fainting to a slip and a kicking from the hip, everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening. But they fought with expert timing.
This show is produced by Dean Devlin and Mark A. Altman and is an Electric Surge Network production. Engineered by Bill Ritter for the Electric Surge Network.